Hi class, today we're going to talk about solving compound and absolute value inequalities. We're going to skip the standardized test practice problem today since we skipped the word problems from section 1.5. So you can just mark a line through it, would be fine. Okay, so we're talking about compound inequalities first. Compound inequalities consist of two inequalities joined by the word and or the word or. To solve a compound inequality, you must solve each side separately. So for two quick examples, a compound inequality is called the graph of an intersection of solutions of two inequalities. So the line is between the two values. An or compound inequality is what's called the union of two solution sets of inequalities. So one goes one direction, the other goes the other direction. And what you do, if you look at the way the inequality is pointing, it will tell you which direction to shade. So let's try a few. There's two examples already worked for us. But I'll just briefly go over those. This is a compound inequality that's an intersection because the solution is between the two ends. So you take both ends, so you take the middle and both ends, and you solve each separately, but then you graph them together. With the or inequality, you still solve two separate parts, but they graph in separate directions. So we'll practice, and these will get easier as you do a few. On the first one, what we're going to do is we're going to solve for x, and I'm going to do it a little bit different than the example. Rather than rewriting it twice, what I'm going to do is just make sure I do the same thing to all three parts. So if I'm going to solve for x, the first thing I'm going to do is subtract 2 from every part. Minus 2, minus 2, minus 2. So I will have that negative 12 is less than 3x. These 2's will cancel, which is less than or equal to 12. I'm going to then divide everything by 3. Threes will cancel. I'll have negative 4 is less than x. Excuse me, that's less than or equal to. Less than or equal to x is 4. So the left end of my graph will be at negative 4, and I'm going to do these like we did on the number line in section 1.5. I'm going to put a parenthesis if it's a less than, and I'm going to put a bracket if it's a greater than, or less than or equal to, excuse me. So then I shade in between. All these values between negative 4 and 4 will make this inequality true. I'm going to do the second one the same way. I'm going to start with what's in the middle, and I see I have a minus 10, so I'm going to add 10 to all parts. I will have 28 is less than 4x, which is less than 60. I'm going to then divide everything by 4. (28) divided by 4 is 7, which is less than x, which is less than 16 divided by 4, which is 15. So x is between 7 and 15. Notice neither one of these has the or equal to, so I'm going to put parentheses around my ends at 7 and at 15, and I'm going to shade between the two. Now let's try a couple of or compound inequalities. So this time I am working two separate, we'll not call them equations, but two separate inequalities. The first one I'm going to take is 3a plus 8 is less than 23. And I'm going to subtract 8 from both sides of the inequality. And I will have that 3a is less than 15. I'm going to divide by 3. A will be less than 5. So I'm going to approximate where 5 is. It's about right here. If I'm going less, I'm going to the left of 5. So I'm going to put my parenthesis, shade to the left, and remember over on the other end we have negative infinity with the parenthesis. Now we're just adding this part just to help with the interval notation. Speaking of, I should have been writing the interval notation. Let me go backwards to the previous screen for just a second, and then we'll come back to this problem. The interval notation, if you'll put that with your answers, would be parenthesis, negative 4, comma, 4, and then a bracket. On the second one, it would be parenthesis 7, comma, 15, parenthesis. So I apologize that I forgot to put those on there. Okay, so the first interval notation for this problem will be parenthesis, negative infinity, comma, 5, parenthesis. Now I'm going to do the second part. And what I'm going to use for the word or, instead of writing or down here when I write my compound inequality, is I'm going to use the U shape. That means the union. Okay, so I'm going to add 6 to both sides. And I'm going to have 1/4 A is greater than 13. Put a 1 under the 13 so that we can go up and across and multiply each side. 1 times 1A is A, which is greater than 4 times 13, which is 52. So if I go on my graph and kind of approximate where 52 is, I'm going to put a parenthesis. I'm going to shade to the right. See the arrows pointing to the right. I'm going towards infinity, and I'm going to put a parenthesis. So all I need to do is fill it in up here. It will be a parenthesis, 52, comma, infinity, parenthesis. Okay, let's try number 4. So we'll start with the left inequality, and we'll add 2 to both sides. So I'll have 2/3 B is greater than 12. Put a 1 under the 12. Go up and across and multiply. 1 times 2B is 2B, which is greater than 3 times 12, which is 36. Divide both sides by 2. B B is greater than 18. So I'm going to go to 18, which is right here. I'm going to open my parenthesis. I'm going to shade to the right. I'm going towards positive infinity. On this one, I'm going to squeeze in my interval notation below. So I'm going to have 18, comma, infinity, parenthesis. We have a union because it's an OR again. And now I'm going to solve the other inequality. So I'm going to take away 5. And I will have 3/4 B is greater than negative 9. I'm going to put a 1 under my 9, and I'm going to go across and multiply. 1 times 3b is 3b, which is greater than 4 times negative 9, which is negative 36. I'm going to divide by 3. And I will have that b is greater than negative 12. I feel like, oh, I messed up. I'm so sorry. Go backwards a minute. I knew something was wrong. These are less thans, not greater thans. Less than, less than, less than. I was seeing that I was going to be coming this direction, and that would be wrong with a union. It needs to go the opposite. That's how I noticed my sign was wrong. So b is less than negative 12. I'm going to put a parenthesis at the negative 12. I'm going to shade towards negative infinity, and I close with parenthesis. So I'm going to fill in parenthesis, negative infinity, comma, negative 12, parenthesis. Okay, we can use compound inequalities that are also absolute value inequalities. Use the definition of absolute value to rewrite an absolute value inequality as a compound inequality. So we're going to use this rule. If the absolute value of A is less than B, then we've got the intersection, the AND inequality, where A will be greater than negative B and A will be less than B. If, on the other hand, the absolute value of A is greater than B, then we have the OR compound inequality. A will be greater than B, or A will be less than negative B. So you have to look at these really close to see which kind of inequality we have. On the first one example that's given for us, since our absolute value of x plus 2 is greater than 4, then then when I take my absolute value away, symbols away, I also have to have x plus 2 is less than negative 4. So I would just solve. Notice they're going the opposite ways. There's the OR. And solve both parts. These I like better because these are the intersection, and I just think they're quicker and easier to do. So the absolute value of 2x minus 1 is less than 5. That would mean, coming down here, that 2x minus 1 is greater than negative 5, but less than 5. Maybe you can see that all the arrows are pointing the same way on this one. They're all pointing to the left, 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 left. Where here, if we've got a right, then we also have right, left. So left, 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 or right, right, left. So the first thing I do is I look and I see that I've got the less than or equal to. So when I take out my absolute value symbols and set C over 2 minus 3 on the line there, then I would fill in, this is left, so I would have left, put a negative 5, left, put a 5. Now I'm going to add 5 everywhere, or excuse me, not 5, add 3, add 3, add 3, add 3. Negative 2 is less than or equal to C over 2, because the negative 3 and the positive 3 cancel, which is less than or equal to 8. You could stick ones underneath here, each of these, if you would like, so that you can go up and multiply. So 2 times negative 2 is negative 4, less than or equal to 1 times C, which is C, less than or equal to, notice the 1 times C is already here for us, 2 times 8, which is 16. So we would put brackets, since we have the or equal to's, we would put brackets at negative 4 and at 16, and then we would shade in between. So our interval notation would be bracket, negative 4, comma, 16, bracket. On number 6, you can see that the inequality is facing left, so this is left, left, left. We'll have negative 2 is less than 10 minus 2k, which is less than 2. We're going to subtract 10 from all parts. This will give us negative 12 is less than negative 2k, which is less than negative 8. Now, here we're going to run into a little tricky part. Since we're dividing by a negative, we're going to have to flip our inequalities, and then we're going to have to re-look at things. So divide everything by a negative 2. And we will have a 6 is greater than k, and k will be greater than 4. Now that looks funny, and it should, because it should go from the least to the greatest. So I'm just going to flip this around. You can see that 4 is less than k, so I'm going to write 4 is less than k, and you can see that k is less than 6. K is less than 6. So I'm going to put parentheses, since we don't have the or equal to, at 4 and 6, shade in between. Our interval notation would be parenthesis, 4, comma, 6, parenthesis. That's a bad looking parenthesis. I just don't want it to be a bracket, it's a parenthesis. Alright, on 7 and 8, you can see that we're going to the right. So if we've got a right, we need a right and a left. So the way you write this would be a plus 9 is less than or equal to negative 30. A plus 9 is greater than or equal to 30. We would subtract 9. You would have A is less than or equal to negative 39. We would subtract 9. greater than or equal to 21. So this is going to be an or. We've got this way or this way. So less than or equal to negative 39 would be about right here. We put a bracket, shade to the left, going towards negative infinity, put a parenthesis. On the right, we're going to put a bracket at 21. We're going to shade to the right towards positive infinity, parenthesis. So the interval notation on this one would be parenthesis, negative infinity, comma, negative 39, bracket, union, bracket, 21, comma, infinity, parenthesis. See how the number line, I put the number lines on here so that it would help y'all to write the interval notation. This is also a greater than. The absolute value is greater than 9, which means the absolute value would also be less than negative 9. 2f minus 11 is less than negative 9. 2f minus 11 is greater than 9. Add 11. 2f is less than 2. Divide by 2. F is less than 1. Less than 1 would be a parenthesis at the 1 going to the left towards negative infinity, parenthesis. On the second one, add 11. 2f is greater than 20. Divide by 2. F is greater than 10. Greater than 10 means I start at 10 with a parenthesis, shade towards positive infinity, parenthesis, and then I fill in my interval notation, so I'm going one way or the other. This is a U. So we have parenthesis, negative infinity, comma, 1, parenthesis, U, parenthesis, 10, comma, infinity, parenthesis. If you're a little confused, I would recommend going back and watching these again. I know why they're confusing to start with. I understand that. So the more you practice them, the more automatic they will become. I think we've got one more. Okay. On this one, this example, we've got to get the absolute value by itself to start with. So we're going to start by subtracting 2 and then just rewriting it with the absolute value. So we'll have the absolute value of x over 2 minus 5 is greater than 8. So if the absolute value is greater than 8, the absolute value will also be less than negative 8. So I will have x over 2 minus 5 is less than negative 8, and x over 2 minus 5 is greater than 8. So I'm going to start by adding 5 to both sides. X over 2 is less than negative 3. I'm going to put a 1 underneath here. I'm sorry, I'm out of room. 1 times x is less than 2 times negative 3 would be negative 6. Less than negative 6 is going to be a parenthesis towards negative infinity, parenthesis. add 5, x over 2 is greater than 13. Put a 1 under the 13. Go up and across. 1 times x is greater than 2 times 13, which is 26. So approximate 26, open my parenthesis there, and I shade to the right towards infinity, parenthesis. So my interval notation will be parenthesis, negative infinity, comma, negative 6, parenthesis, union, parenthesis, 26, comma, infinity, parenthesis. And that is it for solving absolute value and compound inequalities. I hope you have a great day.